Hey everybody, Sean James here. Welcome back to the cabin. Can't tell if I have black on my face. I'm finishing up the roof today. The top ridge caps and the west side that wasn't done in the last video. And of course handling that charcoal wood, I get covered in it. The weather has not been favorable. It started off with rain at the beginning of the week and then it turned to snow. And actually this wasn't even calling for this today and I've got more flurries. So if you're new to the channel or you're a new subscriber, I appreciate you tuning in and staying with me for the cabin series. I'll be doing this every week for eternity, hopefully. And I'll throw some other stuff in the middle of the week, different videos on gear and other stuff. But this Friday's cabin series is becoming a regular thing, and I plan on continuing to do that. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you continue to do so. Yeah, again, if you're new, you might not know. Near the end of the video, it's up to you whether you want to watch it or not. I just talk about whatever's on my mind that day or that week. I call it my self-reflections. So I'm just getting stuff off my chest and talking, and the odd tidbit of maybe helpful information that you might be able to use in your life. So if you're not really interested in just hearing me talk about life and about my trials and tribulations, then you can just skip that part, obviously. So thanks for watching this, guys. I'll see you up here at the cabin next week. Have a great week. Pretty quick, but I think I'll put some hard maple on this fire. Get some good hot coals. I can just run these things over really quickly, I think. putting your face in the mud. You're a crazy dog. Kelly, camera, please. Good girl. What do you think, Cal? Is that enough? Stop. Okay, you're a big help there, girl. Hey, hey. No more help, please. No. Cali, no. No. Good. Get your nose out. Do you want a piece of bread? know, come on. You don't want to eat clay. Whether you want to eat clay or not, you're not going to eat clay. Well, the nice thing about using clay instead of cement, and I've got lots of this clay, is that even if that starts to settle, I gotta move around because I think it's going to be, I think it is going to move a little bit, that I can just lift that tile up and put some more clay under it and then reset it. So happy with that. This is the finished floor height, so I want this stone floor to be flush with that wood. Chilly today. Been working fairly hard on the roof and the floor, so I don't have much clothes on, but once I stop it starts to cool down pretty quickly. Just gonna have a quick lunch. Brought some ham and cheese and mustard and some buns, so stale buns. Yeah. But I'm very hungry, so eat this quickly. about 450 pounds apparently when I looked it up online. Vermont castings. Try to reassemble it here, put the legs back on, see where the legs sit on the stones and see if I need to move the stones around. Otherwise I would have just finished the whole floor first, cemented it in. But I know it's going to shift, so I'd like to get the legs on a decent sized stone to distribute the weight a bit. Easier said than done alone with this big beast. My wife found this on the line on Kijiji like 4 months ago, so it's, yeah, at least 4 months ago I bought it for $140. Built this skid around it and then sledded or wagoned it in down that trail, which was hell, and I've been working around it for all that time, so now I have to try to remember all the parts that I've got in a little box around here. Figure out how to put it back together again. It's IKEA without plans. Not that the plans usually help. Lots of rust on it, but it's surface rust. It's sound all the way throughout. I didn't find any weak spots. cold. Never did get up above freezing today. It's like 1 o'clock and I'm just stopping for lunch. Just stepped inside and gonna sit in here beside the stove. Not very warm, but it's better than sitting out there in the flurries. I mentioned at the beginning of the video I wanted to talk a little bit about my shyness when I was younger and my unwillingness or inability to just ask for what I want out of life. So 21 years old when my girlfriend of a few years cheated on me actually and then broke up with me. Bit of a tough time, but just typical stuff that everybody goes through. But I went 2 years after that without asking anybody out to on a date. I was just too shy, and I guess, I don't know, the pain from that kind of held me back a little bit, but I think mainly I was just so shy that just didn't have the confidence to go up to a girl anywhere and ask to date. So fast forward 2 years to when I was 23, I had come out of the bush at 21, I guess, out of the cabin, and went to work, started a trade with my dad as a apprentice sheet metal worker. So I was 2 years living down in the city with him, and then moved back to my mother's house, the two of us, when she took him back after he spent a couple of years rehabilitating from his alcoholism. So there I was back at home and started banking at the local bank near the house that I grew up in, and the house that we were now living in again. So at 23, I had a couple of rough circumstances. So even though I still own that property, I was making payments on it. I had a car that I had totaled. Somebody hit me. Actually, I stopped at a stop sign, and foolish me didn't have insurance on it, so I lost the vehicle. Still owed $10,000 on it. Had to sell one of the properties to pay that off, and ended up just with the one property with the cabin on it, and just a long, rough period financially. So I didn't have a vehicle. So here I am getting a ride to work with my dad, and our next door neighbor was also a sheet metal worker, worked at the same company. So the three of us would go to work down in Toronto, and we would bank together at the same bank in town. And there was a really, really good looking girl behind the counter, and I would wait in line for her, and that went on for, I don't know, several months, and just very, very high level flirting, I guess. And I just never had the confidence to ask her out, and was just way too shy to consider just seeing if she was interested in me. So nothing came of that until one day, Rick was my neighbor. He comes out to the car after I finished it before him and went back out to his car, or his truck, and he said, "You know that girl behind the counter, the one with all the rings on her hands, she was asking about you. Asked if you had a girlfriend." And I was trying to look through the window to figure out who he was talking about, and finally figured out it was the girl that I actually liked, was attracted to. And sure enough, she was asking about me, and next time I was in there, she was all smiles as I was in the lineup, and so was I, and ended up finally getting up in front of her, and she ended up asking me out, asking me to meet her at some bar that night, and then one thing led to another, and 3 years later we were married. But can you imagine if she hadn't asked me out, we wouldn't be together, and my life wouldn't have turned out the way it has. You know, it would have been different at the very least, and I wouldn't have these two wonderful daughters that I have, 18 and 17-year-old daughters. Just had a very, very happy life. Been married for 23 years, and no signs of stopping. So imagine me being too shy to ask her out. If she hadn't have asked me out, there's no way I was going to. It would have carried on, and who knows who I would have ended up with or where I would have ended up. But what got me thinking about that was not just my shyness and how that held me back, but how many other things in my life have I been too shy or uncomfortable, or for some other reason was just afraid to ask. You know, asking is such a simple thing, but most of us have a hard time doing it. And there's so many opportunities, so many people that we don't have in our lives, so many opportunities that we don't get, that we don't take advantage of because we just simply didn't ask the question. I can tell you some very specific examples. When I was an employer, and we had dozens of employees, and you know, we didn't have set wages. It wasn't a union shop, so we would pay people different rates. Tried to be fair about it. But if somebody came up and asked me for a raise, I usually didn't have the strength, regardless of whether I could afford to give them that raise or not, to give them the raise, so they would get it. And then, of course, somebody else would find out, and I would have to give them a raise as well. So I tried so hard to be a fair employer, but you know what it came down to is the squeaky wheel got the oil. So that's just one example. So how many times did I not ask for a raise, or ask for a different position, or ask for that project or that contract that I needed when I had my own business? So many times I had to force myself to step out of my comfort zone to ask that question. But I know that happens to all of us. I know how many people have missed opportunities. Maybe they go through their life single because they were afraid to ask somebody out, and somebody they had their eye on, or somebody they were interested in. That happens all of the time, especially when we're younger and more insecure. How many people in their late teens, early 20s meet maybe the person they're meant to be with for the rest of their lives and never ask that question? So I think I've learned to ask more often, but I'm still not so secure that I can come out and ask for whatever I want. And of course, I'm leaving stuff on the table, leaving opportunities unexplored. And of course, a lot of that is insecurity and fear of rejection, right? So you're afraid to ask that question because you don't want to hear no. So I think probably obviously the reason for that is that we're too insecure to ask because we don't want to hear no. We don't want to be rejected. Nobody wants to be rejected. We're all looking for somebody to love us, somebody to accept us, and validation for what we are and what we do with our lives. So it's hard to come right out and ask that question and be turned down. And that will happen, of course. You are going to get turned down. I'm going to get turned down, and not going to get everything I asked for, and neither are you. But how many things would we get? How many opportunities would we have not missed because we weren't afraid of asking? So I think it's a good habit to get into, to put yourself out there and ask those questions and see where that takes you. So right now I'm going to ask you, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. Either way, I appreciate you sticking around and watching this part of the video, and that's it for this week. I look forward to seeing you up here at the cabin next week. Have a great week. Take care.